The smoke of Satan.
Hello, and welcome to The Smoke of Satan. My name is Joseph Cillo Jr. I'm a writer of edgy Catholic fiction. I've written a thriller, When the Wood is Dry, my edgy Catholic thriller, my comic book and graphic novel, Blind Prophet, and my Christmas novel, Merry Friggin' Christmas, an edgy Christmas comedy. This is meant to be a Christmas gift for atheists. Okay, so we are on Chapter 8 here, Episode 8 of The Smoke of Satan. And this, we got a good one for you today, folks. The Evolution of Doctrine. Again, the Smoke of Satan comes from something that Pope St. Paul VI said when he said, we would say that through some mysterious crack, no, it's not mysterious, through some crack, the smoke of Satan has entered the Church of God. There's doubt, uncertainty, problems, unrest, dissatisfaction, confrontation. And he said that back in 1971, and I think it's gotten even worse. So we're going to talk about what we think that smoke of Satan is, and just to be straight up front with you, I think it came in with the Vatican Council, the Second Vatican Council. Pope St. Pius X was in a battle against the Modernist Heresy, which we really don't hear much about anymore. We don't hear popes talking about the Modernist Heresy very much anymore. Maybe Pope Benedict said a couple of things about it, but man, St. John Paul II, he really didn't do much about it, and it just got dropped. So you have to ask why. Why was a pope in 1907 writing an encyclical about the Modernist Heresy, taking many, many steps to kind of suppress this thinking, and now we don't really think about it, right? So, you know why? In Vatican II, many of the theologians who kind of ruled the roost there were in this school of thought. So they had by then been, allowed to participate in the council and actually dominated it. So we had a very big change in how the church, that council was run, and how it operated, and the documents that it promulgated, very different from any other council. So let's get into this, the evolution of doctrine. So first, to remind you that this is heresy, okay? This is not what we were taught to believe for, the most of the history of the church, especially after St. Thomas Aquinas, which was like, I don't know, the 12th or 13th century, something way back, okay? When he came up with his theology, which is based on what the Greeks came up with, which the ancient Greeks, I mean, this is like well before the birth of Christ, came up with a philosophical thought where, we have senses, we apply our reason to those senses, and we come up with knowledge. And that is the source of knowledge, and we have our end, which is our natural death. St. Thomas Aquinas added to this the order of grace, which is based on faith, and he said that God also reveals himself directly to us, and that is another source of knowledge, and that leads us to our supernatural end, where we will be judged. Now, in modern philosophy and thinking, the theologians prior to Vatican II started up with this thinking, and this is when Pope Pius X was saying this is wrong, don't do it anymore. But there was something they called Nouvelle Theologie, where they eliminated this order of grace, and they said that grace perfects nature, and faith is the perfection of reason. So you don't need this extra revelation directly from God. They went back and they did something they called ressourcement, which is resourcing of the original fathers, the documents from the fathers, and saying, let's read it through this new lens. This will be fun, right? Okay? And the problem is, this new agnostic way of thinking doesn't lead you to the traditional Catholic faith, and in fact leads you away from it. And that's a problem. And we're seeing the manifestations of that problem now. Now, one of the things that these guys believe is that everything evolves. This is kind of a modern thinking, you know. When we think about science, the idea of evolution in science is very important, right? Things evolve. That's, you know, this became all the rage. And so they started applying this to things like religion and a lot of other things, and philosophy and that kind of stuff. So, trying to reconcile our Catholic traditional faith with this new way of thinking in terms of evolution has yielded many, many problems, and we're going to see. This idea of evolution explains a lot of the problems in the church. It explains why these people won't go away when we keep saying, no, that's not true, that's not what the faith is. So Pope after Pope keeps telling these guys, no, I'm sorry, you can't have female priests. We can't have women priests. We can't have women's ordination of anybody. And they keep saying, we're going to come back and revisit this. And you're going to see that that's part of their thinking and philosophy and theology, that they keep doing that. They think that is how it's supposed to work. We're going to get into that, and we're going to show you that this is a problem. So let's get their statement about evolution here in the words of Pope Pius X, okay? Speaking of the modernists, he says, first of all, they laid down the general principle that in a living religion, everything is subject to change and must change. And in this way, they pass to what may be said to be among the chief of their doctrines, that of evolution. To the laws of evolution, everything is subject. Dogma, church, worship, the books we revere as sacred, even faith, and the penalty of a disobedience is death. So it's even faith itself, and the penalty of disobedience is death. Okay, well, that's pretty severe. You know, I'm not saying it was a good thing, but back in the day, you know, the church used to put the people to death who wanted to make the faith evolve. They called them heretics. You know, you got... we don't like to think about it, but the church itself usually didn't put people to death. It was more likely that the secular state, when the church declared people a heretic, you know, then they said, well, the penalty for being a heretic in my kingdom is we burn you at the stake. Okay, because they wanted everybody to be Christians in their kingdom, because you know we don't want troublemakers. That's how, you know, medieval kings and things used to think. Look, the idea that you must evolve or the penalty is death. Well, that's kind of really turning everything on its head. Okay, because we don't believe these things evolve. We believe in a truth that's eternal. If the truth is eternal, if God is eternal, if the moral laws are eternal, what is this business of evolution? Okay? So, let's go on. Okay. So, dogma. Let's talk about dogma. The progress of dogma is due chiefly to the obstacles which faith has to surmount, to the enemies it has to vanquish, to the contradictions it has to repel. Add to this a perpetual striving to penetrate ever more profoundly its own mysteries. Thus, to omit other examples, as it happened in the case of Christ, in him that divine something which faith admitted in him expanded in such a way that he was at last held to be God. No. No, it didn't expand. You know, Jesus came to earth, he was God, right? He didn't have the idea of him expand in people's minds until he was held to be God. You see, this is how they think. It's not consistent with what we believe. We have a creed when we say that Jesus was the Son of God, he was born of God, he was God, in our text in the Bible, it says the Word, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. You know, these guys, they think that it's all about what happens in your own head, and you figure it out, and it evolves over time, and you know, and we have to be able to evolve so we can answer people's questions. No, no. If something is mysterious and you don't understand how it's in conflict with this or that assertion from somebody, you say it's mysterious, but it's still true. You know? You have to resolve how it works. You have to change what you believe to suit somebody else's beliefs. See, this is the problem with them. If you start doing this, if you start shifting your dogma around to meet whatever objection somebody raises, you don't believe in anything anymore. That's the problem, okay? Let's move on. And enough of my personal editorializing on that. The church. Evolution in the church itself is fed by the need of accommodating itself to historical conditions and of harmonizing itself with existing forms of society. Well, the church shouldn't be evolving to accommodate societies, all right? The church needs to be the church, and it needs to evangelize the truth. And if it is the truth, then it needs to be speaking the truth. Okay? Now, next. Worship. The chief stimulus of evolution in the domain of worship consists in the need of adapting itself to the uses and customs of peoples, as well as the need of availing itself of the value which certain acts have acquired by long usage. You know, some of this I don't really understand. I mean, you do need, we do have some accommodation of different cultures in, you know, our worship, right? But you have to stick with what really works. And there was less of this before Vatican II, I can tell you that, because everything was, you know, our liturgy was in Latin, so everybody had the same problem that nobody really spoke Latin as a natural language. So a lot of it could stay really, you know, the same and could be durable over time, and we weren't always changing it and evolving it. This idea that it needs to evolve to accommodate people is dangerous, okay? And it leads to things like what we just saw in the Amazon, where we're trying to accommodate our worship to people who are worshiping idols. And it leads the Pope to be there worshiping an idol at St. Peter's tomb. It's crazy. You can't have that. That's not an accommodation of culture. That's taking in a pagan idol into your church. You have to be able to see the difference between that. If you're going to buy into this, that we have to accommodate different cultures in our worship, okay? You have to at least see when we're going straying into idolatry, okay? The books we revere as sacred. Well, nothing. I don't even need to say anything about this. The books we revere as sacred don't change, right? There is no evolution of the books we revere to be sacred. They're sacred. It's the Word of God. It's unchanging, okay? All right, next. Let's see. So let's talk even faith itself, all right? The last thing he mentioned was faith. Now, here we get into this idea of how the modernists believe faith works, okay? So let me run you through this. Okay, so you have this primitive form of faith that's common to all. This is kind of like rudimentary, and all men believe this, the same thing, okay? So the origin in human nature and in human life. That's where it originates, in human nature and human life, okay? So we all kind of have this primitive faith that we're kind of born with, okay? Then we have this vital evolution that takes place. Vital evolution brought with it progress, not by the accretion of new and purely adventitious forms from without, but by an increasing penetration of the religious sentiment in the conscience. Okay, so we have a building up of this religious sentiment in your conscience, which causes this primitive faith to evolve. So you kind of like naturally believe in a God, and then you have this this penetration in your conscience. Okay, now there's two forms of this. You have the negative form, which is the elimination of all foreign elements. So you have the sentiment of family and nationality. Now, I don't know if I necessarily want those things to be eliminated, but this is what they're talking about. And positive, by the intellectual and moral refining of man, by means of which the idea was enlarged and enlightened, while the religious sentiment became more elevated and more intense. So we kind of have a negation of certain things from our primitive religious sentiment, a religious faith, and then we also have this positive thing where it's enlarged and enlightened. Okay, so we got two things going on in terms of evolution. Now I don't know. I'm a little puzzled by this idea that we're evolving out of the idea of family and nationality. I don't know if that's a good thing. Anyway, so we also have these prophets, both because of their lives and their words. There was something mysterious which faith attributed to the divinity, and because it fell to their lot to have new and original experiences fully in harmony with the needs of their time. So these are just, prophets are not people who are getting something from God. They just, there was something mysterious about, the faith that is attributed to divinity. This idea of things that are attributed to divinity, right? See, there's already a lack of faith in that. If the prophets are not speaking of revelations from God, we're only interpreting it as that. There's something wrong, right? That's not a basis for our Catholic faith. Okay. In the case of Christ, okay. Let's see. So, in the case of Christ, in him, that divine something which faith admitted in him expanded in such a way that he was at last held to be God. Now, okay, that's just ridiculous. There isn't something divine in Jesus that he was at last held to be God. He came to earth as God, to show us how to live, to suffer and die for our sins, and offer us redemption. Okay? This idea is dangerous. Now, we're going to get into now how this actually works. Okay? And this is going to explain a lot about what you see in terms of synodality in the church that they're talking about now, and how these people think things work, and how this is going to cause this evolution to occur in the church, and how they are justified. They feel themselves justified in behaving this way, even though they're reprimanded for it. Okay? They think this is how it works. So, there is a necessity. There's a theory of necessities and needs. Okay? And in this theory, there's a conflict of two forces. One of them is tending towards progress, and the other towards conservation. Okay? So, in this case, in terms of the church, tradition is the conserving force. Right? So, up until this pope, I think, most of the popes were more in the line of kind of conserving and defending tradition. Well, maybe you would say that changed a bit in Vatican II, and all the post-conciliar popes have kind of jumped ship and are on the other side of progress. So, we're in a little dangerous place when the tradition is not holding back on the progressive force here. So the progressive force, on the contrary, which responds to the inner needs, lies in the individual consciences and ferments there. All right? Well, I don't like thinking about things fermenting in my conscience, because it doesn't necessarily have to be something good, right? It doesn't have to be divine. What is fermenting in my conscience? That I think the woman next door who's married to my neighbor looks really good today? Maybe that's fermenting in my conscience, and it shouldn't be a sin to have adultery. You know, she seems a little interested in me. Maybe this will work out good. You know, what the heck is fermenting in your conscience? It's a little dangerous, isn't it? This idea of this kind of thing changing. So now I need to have my conservation force saying, oh, no, you can't do that because, well, you know, that's, you know, that thing is wrong, and tradition says it's wrong. So, no, you can't go ogling your neighbor's wife and desiring her, and but especially you can't sleep with her. But maybe you have so it says you can't sleep with her now. Well, maybe we come to a compromise and say I can ogle her without sleeping with her. I mean, it's not right. we can't do this. You know, these things, the morality does not evolve over time. You know, people may tolerate more sin in their lives, but the sinfulness hasn't changed. It's still sinful for me to even ogle my neighbor's wife and desire her in my heart, right? Even that is adultery. And there's no compromising between this progressive force, because my inner conscience is telling me it should be okay for me to sleep with my neighbor's wife. I mean, this is how ridiculous it can be. All right. So, all right. Now, it is by a species of compromise between the two, the forces of conservation and of progress, that is to say, between authority and individual consciences, that changes and advances take place. So you see, they think this is how changes happen, this is how things evolve. We have to have a progressive force that's being chastised by the traditional conservation force, and it's got to be a battle, and we got to constantly be in a battle, and then when we're accreting, we're getting a little bit of compromise here and there, and then finally we get the progressive idea wins out in the end, at some level. Okay, that's not what we believe. The church has the truth, and we defend the truth. This is a very simple concept, right? There's not this evolution of truth. The truth is the truth. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He doesn't change. He's the eternal one, right? Okay? And his kingdom will never end, right? So let's hear some of the things that Pope Pius X said about these guys, okay? Modernists express astonishment when they are reprimanded or punished. What is imputed to them as a fault, they regard as a sacred duty. Being in intimate contact with consciences, they know better than anybody else, and certainly better than the ecclesiastical authority, what needs exist. Nay, they embody them, so to speak, in themselves. So this is kind of why, this is why they don't give up, right? They keep doing, they think this is what they're supposed to do. Let's go on. Another quote. Let authority rebuke them as much as it pleases. They have their own conscience on their side and an intimate experience which tells them with certainty that what they deserve is not blame, but praise. Okay, again, they're doing their job. They're the progressive force. And you're doing your job. You're the traditional conservation force. So we should all be happy with this. It's how they think. Okay? Then they another quote. Then they reflect that after all, there is no progress without a battle, and no battle without its victim. And victims, they're willing to be like the prophets and Christ himself. So now, you kind of see they have this martyrdom complex. I'm like Jesus, bringing the new word, the new idea, But really, it's only heresy. Any heretic in the history of the church could have claimed this kind of thing. Okay. They have no bitterness in their hearts against the authority which uses them roughly. After all, it is only doing its duty as authority. See? So it's all fitting together. This is how it's supposed to work. We're supposed to be in this constant battle and turmoil, right? Because this is how you get the church evolving the way it needs to evolve. Because it has to evolve. Everything has to evolve. And this is how evolution works. It's always a fight. I don't want to be in a fight anymore. I want to be in a true church that Jesus Christ established, that knows what it's talking about and isn't fighting to change. This is crazy. And it's not what we taught for 1,800 years or so, before these guys started, rabble-rousing in the church. And now they're in everywhere. They're in the seminaries. They're teaching this nonsense to people. They think they're supposed to act this way. They think they're supposed to keep pushing for progress. And no, they aren't. They aren't supposed to do this, okay? They're supposed to be reprimanded. The Pope is supposed to call them out. Okay, here's the next quote. Their sole grief is that it remains deaf, that's the church, remains deaf to their warnings, because delay multiplies the obstacles which impede the progress of souls. But the hour will most surely come when there will be no further. Here's a 10-cent word for you. Tergiversation. For if the laws of evolution may be checked for a while, they cannot be ultimately destroyed. Okay, so this tergiversation is kind of like ambiguous talk and just kind of muddling through, to make your point. So it's not a good thing. And so they go their way, reprimands and commandments notwithstanding, masking an incredible audacity under a mock semblance of humility. Okay, so they think progress needs to happen faster. They pretend that they're being humble about it. They understand that it's going to take a long time. We're going to be in a fight. We have to get them slowly to compromise, and this is how it's supposed to work. They're working the system to try to change the church. And the church has to be a rock and say, no, we already have the true faith. We don't need evolution. No, we have the eternal faith. Okay, one more quote here. It is necessary for them to remain within the ranks of the church in order that they may gradually transform the collective conscience, thus unconsciously avowing that the common conscience is not with them, and that they have no right to claim to be its interpreters. Okay, there you go. Let's make sure you understand what the good Pope is saying. They're admitting, by the fact that they have to fight and make this progress happen and remain in the church with this kind of fight all the time, that they aren't part of the common conscience. They're trying to force something new into the common conscience. They're not there. So what they have by their own definition is not true. Because they say it's true if it's in the common conscience. This is the point that Pope Pius X is pointing out to them. And this needs to stop, right? So this is why we're in a fight all the time in the church, because they think they're supposed to be in a fight. I actually have some more quotes. I thought I was done, but there's actually quite a few more. So let's let's go through it. All right. There is to be nothing stable, nothing immutable in the church. Okay. Now, Pope Pius X starts citing his predecessors because, see, this is a long game. This is a long battle. They finally got a really big victory in Vatican II. And they pulled the church off the rails, I think. All right? And we're starting to see realizations of that, especially with this guy, Archbishop Vigano, putting out his letters now and actually calling it out as the source of the problem is Vatican II. These things are not consistent with the traditions of the church, not consistent with what we've taught up until the council. Okay? Things didn't change all of a sudden in 1960. But we were fighting it way before then. Okay. Even in 1907, when Pope Pius X wrote this encyclical, Pascendi Dominici Gregis, when he wrote this, he's citing back to the popes before him that were fighting it. So here's Pope Pius IX wrote, "These enemies of divine revelation extol human progress to the skies, and with rash and sacrilegious daring would have it introduced into the Catholic religion as if this religion were not the work of God, but of man, and of some kind of philosophical discovery susceptible of perfection by human efforts." Okay? So now we got Pope Pius IX saying, hey, guys, you can't perfect what came from God with human interventions and human thinking and human philosophy. Okay? Stop it. All right. In Pius IX's syllabus of errors, okay? This is an error, all right? He's stating it as a positive here, but he's calling it an error, okay? Where it is enunciated in these terms: divine revelation is imperfect and therefore subject to continual and indefinite progress corresponding with the progress of human reason. What he's saying is that is an error. You can't believe that divine revelation is imperfect and therefore subject to continual and indefinite progress corresponding with the progress of human reason. You can't believe that and be a Catholic. Okay? According to Pope Pius IX, and this is Pope Pius X quoting Pope Pius IX. Okay? Now, in the First Vatican Council, okay, here's another quote from the First Vatican Council. "The doctrine of the faith, which God has revealed, has not been proposed to human intelligences to be perfected by them, as if it were a philosophical system, but as a divine deposit entrusted to the spouse of Christ, to be faithfully guarded and infallibly interpreted. Hence, the sense, too, of the sacred dogmas is that which our Holy Mother Church has once declared, nor is this sense ever to be abandoned on plea or pretext of a more profound comprehension of the truth." This is what I've been saying. The job of the church is to protect this deposit of faith, not to interpret it and figure out how is it evolving. Right? No, it's not supposed to be evolving. We're not supposed to try to make it evolve. We're not supposed to keep reinterpreting it because the times have changed. No, that's not what our faith is. But suddenly, after Vatican II, this changed. We succumbed to this thinking, and we said, no, well, forget about all that stuff we taught in the past. Now we think it does evolve. Yeah, these people, the supreme arrogance of them. And as Pope Pius X noted, the feigned humility, it's galling. All right, as you can see, it upsets me quite a bit. So let's give you another quote here. The same counsel continues. Let intelligence and science and wisdom therefore increase and progress abundantly and vigorously in individuals and in the mass, in the believer, and in the whole church throughout the ages and the centuries, but only in its own kind. That is, according to the same dogma, the same sense, and the same acceptation. Okay? So, he's saying that we aren't against progress. Science can progress and wisdom can progress, but we can't contradict what we already know. The things we know are not going to change, right? All right. Again, you can see I'm very passionate about this because I think this is where we really find the problems with the church. I mean, we have Pope Paul VI talking about the smoke of Satan and decrying it as uncertainty, doubt, uncertainty, problems, unrest, dissatisfaction, confrontation. And we have these modernist jokers thinking that that's a good thing. All right? Pope Paul VI was not saying it's a good thing. He's saying the smoke of Satan is causing all these problems. But if you hold to what these people believe, you believe there's supposed to be these conflicts. You're supposed to be this confrontation. This is how it's supposed to work. This is how the church evolves. It's wrong. And it causes a lot of strife and division. And if they want to go create their own new church where they can evolve the faith wherever they want, our Catholic Church doesn't stop them from doing that anymore. There was a time when we really believed that we had to stop people from being heretics. We tolerate heretics everywhere, but they don't need to be in our church. If you don't believe what we believe in a traditional faith that's been handed down by the apostles, go start another church like all the other Protestant sects do, and then you can get an argument there and split up and create a new church, and split up and create a new church, and create a new church, and create a new church, which is exactly what happened with the Protestants. It's why you got like 10,000 different Protestant sects. Look, the one Holy Catholic Apostolic Church has to be the one Holy Catholic Apostolic Church teaching the one Holy Catholic Apostolic faith that's been handed down from Jesus through the apostles to us, and it doesn't evolve. Okay? That's it. You want something that evolves, go find a church of evolution somewhere. Found your own church of evolution. And stop this. Okay. Again, my name is Joseph Cillo Jr. I know I got a little passionate there. I hope you will check out my books, When the Wood is Dry, an edgy Catholic thriller, and Blind Prophet is a comic book graphic novel, it's a supernatural thriller, and my Christmas book, A Gift for Atheists, Merry Freaking Christmas, an edgy Christmas comedy, which comes in a naughty edition and a standard edition. The standard edition has kind of a literary gimmick to cover up some of the bad language. The naughty edition has all the glorious bad language you can want. Okay? But it is meant for atheists who probably won't be too offended by the bad language, all right? So if you're going to give it to somebody, you might give them that one. But you can also give them this one. This is not bad for an atheist either. It just it uses a little bit of gimmick to make it more friendly for my Catholic friends and readers who might be offended by bad language, okay? All right. But atheists really aren't. And this atheist in this story, he used a lot of bad language because he was an atheist and he didn't care. All right. So we will see you next time on The Smoke of Satan. And next episode, let's see, what will it be? Episode 9, The Modernist as Critic. Okay? I might be less passionate about that one. But we will see you next time. Take care. Bye.